Killen is the Managing Director and the Chief Executive of the Australian Agricultural Company, AACO. He's had 25 years' experience in global financial markets, working in the major financial hubs around the world before returning to Australian agriculture. Hugh has held senior executive roles in Westpac, managing its North American business throughout the global financial crisis. He was raised on pastoral stations in northern New South Wales and southern Queensland, and he's also an alumni of the Harvard Business School. Please welcome Hugh Killen.
It's a pleasure to be here today, and I see on the holding slide that I've been promoted to the CEO of Nutrien, which is really exciting. So I'm clearly not Chuck. Before I start, I want to acknowledge the Australian Bureau of Agricultural Resource Economics and Science for bringing us together today for using data to drive discussion about our economic future. I want to thank the National Farmers Federation in partnership with the Commonwealth for driving the Talking 2030 discussion. And I thank the Minister who was here this morning and all of you for being here today. At the outset, it's important to acknowledge one of the biggest issues we face today, and that is the spread of coronavirus, or COVID-19, around the world. Our thoughts are with the individuals and families dealing with this virus directly. Now, I think we're all starting to understand the magnitude of the impact this is likely to have on our world, whether it's health systems gearing up to manage a worst-case scenario, or the impact on complex global supply chains. This is a significant global phenomenon which sets a very stark context for our discussions today, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this through the course of our panel discussion. On a brighter note, I was privileged to be there for the NFF Leaders Summit last year, where we were given a one-year check-in on the Talking 2030 campaign. I was impressed by the work done to promote $100 billion of agricultural output by 2030. But make no mistake, reaching $100 billion by 2030 is ambitious. It will require a considerable uptick in our current trend lines, and it requires more than business as usual. But I don't think we should be worried by this, because in agriculture, business as usual is changing on an almost daily basis. Our session today focuses on the outlook for commodities and farm incomes. It is an interesting focus for us and a challenging concept, because at AACO, our strategy is to move away from the commodity business model, and this is fundamental to our part of reaching $100 billion by 2030. I want to explain what this means for us and for agriculture more broadly. By their nature, commodities are fungible. It doesn't matter where they come from or who produces them. We grade them for quality, but after that, they are pretty anonymous. This has been the story of agriculture in Australia in many respects. We grade wool for quality, and then we judge it on price and availability. We grade cereals for quality, and then we mix them and ship. And we test milk for solids and volume, and then we sell it onto the processor. Now, traditionally, beef has been the same, but there are trends away from this. At the purest commodity end, hamburger meat is mixed and sold under downstream brands. Increasingly, consumers are choosing beef from different places under loose country of origin brands. And consumers are increasingly engaging with breed brands like Angus and Wagyu. Yet despite these trends, much of the beef that you and I eat is actually pretty anonymous. This is a real change for AACO as we evolve into the world's leading premium beef company. Now, eating the finest beef is a deeply personal experience. There is nothing like the taste of a beautiful ribeye from an animal born at Brunette Downs in the Northern Territory, grown out at Southwest Galway in Southwest Queensland, and then grain-fed to perfection at Canoe Feedlot in Central Queensland. Now, cooking this meat is pure joy. Taking a bite is a deeply personal experience, and sharing this food with friends and family is exactly what friendship and family is all about. So when we make our operational plans on station and on farm, it is always with this personal experience in mind. Now at AACO, we aim to grow the best beef in the world at scale, but this only works if you have the best customers in the world. And this means engaging with people who pay top dollar for the experience. And it means making a personal connection with them, a connection to our beef, our brand, and to our story. None of these things is transferable. They can't be anonymous. and they make us personally accountable every time we offer an AACo product. Now, this has been a big change for us, but our most recent results tell the story. We're continuing to grow the value of our Wagyu sales internationally, and we are delivering this growth under our flagship Westholme and other brands. In the first half of this financial year, we launched Westholme in 6 new cities around the world, and this has helped us to deliver positive growth despite ongoing seasonal challenges. Now, this is the story of AACo today and into the future. Our growth comes from moving away from the commodity market, and it comes from telling our story in every piece of beef we sell, and this is our contribution to reaching 100 billion in 2030. I think AACo's shift away from commodity production is relevant to the wider industry. Since the end of the old protection system, we've been through waves of change. We reshaped our national sheep flock. The dairy industry is completely unrecognisable. Grains and cereals are globally competitive, and our beef industry continues to reshape our herd, our structure and operations. All of these changes have made us stronger, and they have forced us to take greater responsibility for the value chains connecting us to our customers. Today, producers who differentiate and connect to customers will do well. Those who connect to the right secondary producers further up the value chain will do better, and those able to work together to shape and control their whole value chains will do best. In this context, increased consumer expectations are not a burden to be managed. For AACo, for us, they are our North Star. Now, we know that the highest value consumers have the highest expectations. We use this to drive performance at every level in our company. Our focus on customer experience makes us personally accountable, and growing consumer expectations align with our vision to produce the best beef in the world and at scale. Now, unfortunately, regulations and customer expectations rarely align. They do when things go really wrong, because breaching basic food quality and safety regulations will always fail to meet customer expectations. But, at best, regulations reflect the lowest common denominator. Our day-to-day focus is almost always on exceeding any regulations for safety, quality, and sustainability. Sometimes regulations are used as hidden trade restrictions. We try to understand these barriers and manage as best we can. We trust the government negotiations to iron these out, but they do not really inform our quality, our safety, or sustainability. Some other regulations which apply to us were not designed for our business. Governments continue to develop land use and related rules, and these are often based on limited understanding of the diverse natural environment, and they offer little capacity for dialogue, for collaboration, innovation, or a shared commitment to quality. This type of regulation can harm our ability to operate. It can harm our relationship with government, and when we argue, it can harm our reputation with the world. But when governments create blanket regulations for things like land management, they can punish us for land use practices that are actually highly sustainable. For example, Queensland land clearing rules might work in some areas, but they don't align with best practice land and water management across our stations. And if we protest, some will question our commitment to sustainability. In contrast, good regulation has the power to make us all better. It can align with our vision for the highest quality beef and the highest customer expectations. And it allows for positive dialogue, collaboration, innovation, and quality production. To achieve this, good regulation had to go beyond traditional negative incentives, which prohibit certain behaviours. Where these are appropriate, they should be policed effectively. But if we want regulations that support our 100 billion output target, we need more. Good regulation is positive, including positive incentives which foster innovation. This requires regulators to share our commitment to growth and sustainability, and it requires regulators who can become positive partners in this growth. Now, this is especially important where regulations reflect wider government policy. For example, all Australian governments are investing in their responses to climate change. Meat and Livestock Australia has supported this with a commitment for the red meat industry to be carbon neutral by 2030. Now, from the perspective of a fragmented industry working alone, made up of many small operators, this target is impossible. But from the perspective of an industry working together with real support from government, it actually just might be possible. The only way to get close to this goal, though, is by aligning policy, industry, and regulation. And this begins with moving past the culture wars and accepting that transition must happen. We can then look at how our respective investments and capabilities can actually work together. Our goal must be to align overall investment across public and private sectors to support transition. First of all, we need governments of all persuasions working together to set a clear national policy framework. We need major parties, minor parties and independents working through a serious debate to provide clarity beyond the electoral cycle. And then we need state and federal governments working together to agree a set of practical shared national sustainability goals and targets. And this is essential to a national policy framework, which can allow all departments, agencies, communities to work together on the practical steps that we need. Imagine government and regulators working with industry to direct public and private investment in energy transition, helping fund the move from grid power to solar power, or transitioning transport from diesel to gas, and maybe ultimately hydrogen. Imagine government and regulators working together to help unlock the potential of the rainfall in Northern Australia. Imagine this asset being managed sustainably, helping increase production outside of stressed systems like the Murray-Darling. And imagine if water regulations aligned with land use regulations in places like Queensland, so that government support for managing water assets wasn't undermined by government prohibition on basic land management practices. So none of this can happen where regulations are fragmented and made up of solely negative incentives. When this is the case, most of our energy goes into getting as close as possible to the prohibition line. And when this happens, you get things like the Banking Royal Commission. And you get industries like ours becoming more fragmented as individual operators work to avoid contact with regulators on the ground. Worst of all, a negative regulation perspective ignores the culture of innovation and change that we've actually built into Australian agriculture. And it ignores the scale and complexity of change required to succeed in the future. I believe another, more positive regulatory perspective is possible. I believe it is possible to align customer expectations, policy, and regulations. And I believe that when we do, we can start working together in good faith for common goals like sustainability. This has not been the traditional approach, but in a sector where changes are everyday constant and we need to evolve to reach 100 billion by 2030, I believe these relationships can evolve together too.